M&M today launched the Furio range of intermediate commercial vehicles. From the sidelines of that event, our colleague Kevin Lee caught up with Pawan Goenka, MD of M&M. Now, Kevin began by asking Mr. Goenka about the rationale behind this new vehicle launch, given the tough competition in the segment.
It's a challenge, no doubt about it. When you come into a new segment, it always is difficult to penetrate when there are very well entrenched players. It took us a long time in the HCV segment to get to a point where we have a reasonable volume. Okay, and having done that now, we have a gap in our offering. I mean, look at our offering. We stop at 6 ton today and start at 25 ton. And therefore, when a customer starts with a Mahindra, let's say even a three-wheeler, and goes from three-wheeler to a Supro to a pickup to a LCV, then he has to go out of Mahindra and then come back in at HCV, which is not desirable. And therefore, it was important for us to be in the ICV segment. But the important thing is that just being there and selling few hundred trucks is not really something that one can make a business out of. And therefore, we had to make sure that when we enter this segment, as a sixth player, we must offer something that is a very compelling value proposition. And that's the reason we have taken our time to ensure that we have compelling value proposition.
You mentioned yourself that the BS6 deadline is coming. That's expected April 1st in 2020. And more variants of the Furio line will be launched after we migrate to BS6. So was it a conscious decision to launch before that to sort of test the water before BS6 comes into place properly?
Well, I mean, we're still 1 year away from BS6, so we couldn't have a product waiting for one more year. At the same time, we didn't want to launch too many variants with BS4 and then have to change everything with BS6. Therefore, we have chosen those variants that are in the highest volume segment of the range that we are launching, and launch them before BS6 and BS4, and then obviously we will have to redesign those for BS6, re-engineer those for BS6, and others will come in BS6.
I know it's a silent period, so I'm not going to ask you about financials, but the budget is coming up this week. You mentioned previously that because it's an interim budget, you don't have big bang expectations, just maybe some tweaks to direct taxes. But there's also news that something may be done for farmers, and that of course will impact you. So what's your view?
Well, of course, I would expect something to be done for farmers. After all, it is a pre-election budget, and therefore something will be there. What we need to see is whether it is sort of redistributing what is already in place and not affecting the fiscal deficit, or whether it will be new stuff that will be given. We do expect that fiscal deficit target will not be met, and there will be some breaching of that. That I think everybody is prepared for. It won't be a surprise to anyone. 20 basis point, 30 basis point kind of breach, or what we had last year, that would be acceptable to most people. In terms of big bang announcement, other than something for farm, something for agri sector, and perhaps a reconfirmation that the direction that the government has taken will continue. Infrastructure investment, Make in India, the focus on sort of subsidies the way they are, direct deposit schemes, all of these things. Perhaps statements more, qualitative statements to reconfirm that the government continues in the same direction.
All right, on that note, let's move on now to another exclusive. Startups have made a fresh plea to Ministers Piyush Goyal as well as Suresh Prabhu on the angel tax issue, saying that despite some of the ease that was offered earlier on in January, it's not enough, and that this tax is still a pretty sticky matter. Timsi Jaipuria is joining in with the details. Timsi, what more do startups want?
Well, sources indicate that startups have made a fresh plea to Piyush Goyal and Suresh Prabhu on the angel tax issue, where startups have written to Piyush Goyal and Suresh Prabhu saying that angel tax continues to be a sticky issue, and the January 16 circular brought in by DIPP doesn't give the immunity sought by startups. Startups in their fresh submission to DIPP have sought changes in the January 16 circular, and they have sought a blanket exemption from Section 56 of the IT Act. For DIPP level 1 recognized startups, startups say that they are willing to submit additional documents for last 2 years, including financials, monthly expenses, employee details, TDS returns, GST returns. So let's see what happens finally, because DIPP is likely to hold a roundtable with startups on February 4th, where industry representatives will be there, CBDT officials will be there, Revenue Secretary is also likely to attend that meeting. So they are now seeing that with a fresh person coming at the helm when it comes to the finance ministry. They want a fresh look to be given to the issue. And yes, let's see what Piyush Goyal does to this issue. Back to you.